Hello everyone, welcome back on my channel. I'm Ramkesh Singh, Unity game developer, YouTuber and blogger. Most of you are just requesting a lots of time that I should make a video on interview questions for the experience, the freshers. In this video, I'm going to tell you that how Unity developer job occurs, what are the phases and what are the questions they ask. So I'm not sure that every question will be asked, but yeah, maybe you got few questions from them. So let's start the today video. If you're new on the channel, make sure to subscribe the channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe and don't forget to like the video if you want to support me. So just support me on the Patreon and share with your friends. Okay, so for the Unity developer job, it might be possible that you get an assignment in starting. Not all the company provide you the assignment, very rare, or if you are experienced developer, so the chances is more that you get the assignment. It might be possible that you get assignment in the starting of your interview, or you can just get after your interview you can get the assignment, and then manager or HR. And initially HR just talk to you about your current salary, about your expectation. Main important thing is that interview. If you are getting the assignment, so on the assignment I've also made many tutorials, so I will just drop the link. You can just check out whatever I have got in my assignment. So I have made few of them, but not all because in some assignment they provide the whole game to make time taking process. So not all the company, but few company provide. And after that you can see that there is a interview. So in interview part, that is not only interview part single phase, but it is also divided in the 4 phase. If I am taking the interview, so mostly what I do, I just divide in 4 parts, and most of my interview happens in the same hierarchy. Like first interview is about the Unity knowledge. They test about the Unity knowledge. They ask basic to advanced if I am experienced, but for the fresher they just ask the basic question, not about the how server interaction work, how minimization work, how net disconnects work. So these questions are not for the to everyone, fresher to experienced developer. And then after that, if you have mentioned in your resume and they are particularly looking for multiplayer or AR VR, so just they starting questions on this topics, SFS, mirrors, AR, VR. These are the topics. And after that, in the third section, they ask about the OOPS question and then C# questions. After the third phase, they start asking on the your logic test. Means they start asking a basic programming questions, or they can ask to write the simple programs, or they can ask only for the logics. And then if you qualify this section, in one interview they ask, means they divide. If you have time for 1 hour, so just they divide 20 minutes or 25 minutes for the Unity knowledge and multiplayer, and then OOPS, C# and then logic. So in this tutorial I'm just going to cover one, that is the Unity knowledge. I will discuss from basics to advanced. This section, basic to advanced, asks to experienced developer, but basic question is common for the fresher as well as for the experience. So let's start the today video. So I have just prepared the PPT so that I can explain very easily, and I had many tutorials on it, that interview questions. So people were requesting, because at that time I was shared the fresher question, and on the internet you will not get that much variety. So all the internet question also I have covered, as well as what I have faced in my interview I will also share in this video. So let's start the PPT. So there is a first question, and this is very basic question that explain what is the prefabs. If you have worked a little bit about the Unity, so you must know that what is the prefab. Prefab in Unity is referred as a prefabricated object template class combining objects and its script. At the design time, a prefab can drag from object window into the scene window and add it to the scene hierarchy of the game objects. So basically, what is the prefab? Prefab is something that you just drag and drop inside the asset from the hierarchy, and you can just instantiate the prefab at a runtime. Any game object you want to instantiate, so you can just, so this is the technical terms you can utilize, and whatever I am saying that you can also share to the viewer. Let's move on the other question. Hope you got the idea what is the prefab. Basically, prefab is something prefabricated object which drag and drop from the hierarchy to asset window, and from there you can just instantiate at a runtime whenever you want, or you can just make the copy of that prefab. So next question is, what is the use of collision matrix? So you must know what is the collision matrix. Collision matrix is a matrix whenever you create any layers in your project, so that layer added in the collision matrix, and it define that there is check marks. It define that which layer will interact to which layer. So similar thing here is, for each new layer, a new column and row added on the collision matrix. This matrix is responsible for fine interaction between the layers. So this matrix you can see in the physics in the setting. So you can see there is a hierarchy. That is the collision matrix. Means collision matrix basically used when let's suppose we are making one car and there is a wheel, and we have also added some colliders there, so we don't want that wheel collide with same parts of the car. So at that time we use the collision matrix. That is the practical example. I hope you got the idea what I'm trying to say. And another question is very basic question, that is what is the ray cast. In ray cast we will use to point a ray towards a certain direction, and the practical example of layer mask in the ray cast I will explain. But what is the ray cast? Ray cast is something that we just fire a ray in certain direction, and we can define the length of the ray and it hits something. So heating effect we can get all the properties. So this is the simple thing that we use physics.raycast, and it must be that whenever you are using the raycast, there must be a rigid body because it takes the physics, so it use physics raycast. So there is origin, target, length, and layer mask. And what is the use of layer mask? So most of the, if you are making a simple application, you don't need to use the layer mask. But if you are making the multiplayer type stuff, so at that time you have to use the layer mask. What is the layer mask? Layer mask is basically layer where you define that, let's suppose you are making a multiplayer game. If you are shooting the enemies, but sometimes when your friends, means you have made one room and you are playing with your friends, and you and your player friends is just playing together, when you hit enemy, so enemy's health will be reduced. But when you hit your player, so at that time it should not be reduced his health. So at that time how we can identify that who is our player, who is enemy? So we can define by the layer mask, provide same layer mask to our friend's player, and no other enemy will be there, they are different layer mask. So I hope you got the idea what I'm trying to say. So this is the raycast and this is the practical example, and you can find in many ways. So I just found it that a very simple example I share with you. This question is that what is the asset bundle and addressable? So asset bundle and addressable basically are the assets we just create the bundle and upload on the server, and in Unity we just access the asset bundle and addressable. The basic difference is that asset bundle is very old, and there was many flaws in the asset bundle, and addressable is new one. I think it just launched in the 2017, and it is very fast, it is very easy to create. So this is the basic difference in asset bundle and addressable. And if you are a fresher, then you might be thinking that this question is really for you. So there's a basic question they might be asked to you, but if you are a fresher, they ask the basic question as well as OOPS and C# questions. So I think you should prepare for all the questions if they want to ask to you. So you can see that what here written, the asset bundle are the file that can be exported from the Unity to contain asset of your choice. Asset bundle are created to simply downloading content your application. Okay, so just whatever I have explained, this is the similar thing. And even you can make your scene also a asset bundle or addressable. Why vectors should be normalized? This is a very common question they ask. Why vectors should be normalized? If you don't want to normalize, there is no any flaws, but normalization help you to just make the result precise. That if you are make anything normalized, so it's give you a unit length. Like if you are giving the value 1.2, so if you normalize it, so you will get the one value. And if you multiply something with the 1 or something with a normalized value, so it will be a very precise. So that's why we use the vectors normalization. And next question is that it's very common question. So if you have a 6-month experience or 1 year experience, this question are also common. And when I'm saying the fresher, it doesn't mean that you are just starting your career. Fresher means if you are starting the career, if you have 6 months of experience, or if you have 1 year of experience, basic questions are very encountered you in your interview. So can 2 game objects, each with only a sphere collider, both set as triggered and raise on triggered event? Explain your answer. So they are asking that if we have 2 sphere collider, so they want to check that they will collide with each other or not, or if we will able to trigger them or not. So question answer is no, because you can't collide anything still if one of them have rigid body. Without rigid body means at least one game object must have one rigid body. At that time it will collide, otherwise it will not. So no collision event between 2 objects can only be raised when one of them has a rigid body attached to it. This common error when implementing application that use physics. So this is the very basic question they ask. They want to check that without the rigid body there is no any physics apply, so there will be no any collision happen. Explain what is the fixed time step in Unity 3D. Why does fixed time step setting affect the game speed? So basically, as you know that if we are running the game, so game can run on multiple FPS. So in some games you can just set your fixed timestamp that on which our game should be run. So you can just define. So fixed timestamp feature help us to set system updates at a fixed time interval. A queue-like mechanism will manage all the real-time events that are accumulated between time echoes. If frame rate drops below some threshold limit set for fixed timestamp, then it can affect the game speed. Okay, so basically through the coding you just define that what will be your fixed time setting for that game, but some point it may create problem. Explain why time.delta time should be used to make things that depend on the time operate correctly. So mostly we use time.delta time to make the game independent to the frame rates, because frame rate is not something very accurate thing to calculate the things, because frame rate can vary in different devices in different games. So it's totally depends on the devices, and it might be create that if in scene there is so much stuff, so frame rate may be down. So this is not a good way to calculate on the basis of the frames. So at that time we use the time.delta time. Why? There is the reason. Real-time applications such as games have variable FPS, that's I explained. They sometimes run on the 60 fps, or when suffering slowdowns they will run on the 40 fps or less. If you want to change a value from A to B in 1 second, you cannot simply increase A by B between two frames, because frames can run faster or slower, so one frame can different duration. Okay, so if one frame is occurring, might be second frame occur on very delay, or it may occur just after the second, just after another. So it is not clear that how it will be work. So the way correct is to measure the time taken from x to x plus 1 and increment a, leveraging change with frame duration delta time by doing a plus equal to b minus a into delta time. Okay, so basically what we are doing, what is the delta time? So I have not mentioned about what is the delta time. So basically what is the delta time? Delta time is the amount of time between one frame to another frame. So that's why we multiply by the delta time. So in most of this interview question they also ask what is the delta time. So you must be prepared for it. When the accumulated delta time reaches 1 second, you will assume B value. So basically they are not considering the frame, they are considering the frame. They are not considering the frame, they are considering the time between the one frame to another frame. I hope you got the idea. So let's move on another question. If you didn't get my point, so you can just search about it and read about it, that so that you can be confident in your answer. This is the most asked question, that is the Unity event function, the order in which they will invoked when application is closed. So I think in every interview everyone asks about this question, so I think you have to be prepared with this question. So first we will call awake, on enable, start, update, let update, on GUI, on application quit, on disable, on destroy. If you miss the on GUI, there's not any problem. So you have to just remember the things, and basically everyone know about that is awake call first, then on enable, and then start, and then update, let update. But there is a one fixed update that is not mentioned here, so I think you have to also remember. So after the update there will be called the fixed update, don't miss it. You have to always remember that update, fixed update, and then let update. What is the difference? You have to also remember, we will discuss about it. You have to also remember the difference between awake and start. There is a mostly also people ask about the awake and start difference, because they most probably run together. There is a very little difference. And on enable and on disable is also very important function. You must remember that why we use it. And on application quit, and there is one also on application pause. I think not every method is there, so just search about it, and then there will be also on application pause. There is only on application quit, so you have to also remember that. I think that is not a complete list, so please be aware of it. I just copy paste, didn't see that how many methods are there, so sorry. And here is another question, and this question is on internet everywhere. That is the and in my 2 interviews they have also asked the same question. So I think I have also carry the internet question as well as my experience questions. So these are the internet questions. I will share what other questions I have asked that is not on the internet. So they have asked the basic question. This is the basic script, that is a vector target, float speed, update method. Finish the code so that game object containing this script moves with the constant speed towards the target. There is a one target and just a game object move towards a target, that is the target, and start moving once it reaches one, means on object in moving towards the target, but when it will be on the one distance, one unit length, so at that time it will be stop moving. So what will be the solution? So here is solution, that first we are checking the distance, because this is the target and we are here, so we are just checking this distance, how far where we are. So we are checking by using the vector 3 distance. So target is that, and transform position means self, and then we are putting the condition that if distance is greater than 1, so at that time we have to move, but when it is less than, so at that time we will stop. So this is the thing, that if distance is 1 greater than, so at that time we have to just take the direction target dot transform dot position. So we are finding the target in which direction we have to move, and then that direction we are just normalizing, and then we are giving the position to this object, that transform dot position plus direction, whatever we are getting the direction, into speed, into we are making time dot delta time, so that we can just move without affecting the frame rates. So that is why we are using. So this is a very simple examples and simple script. So hope you got the idea about the Unity thread. And basically I want to confirm you that in Unity you can use the thread, but from the guidelines you should always avoid to using the thread inside the Unity, because Unity run on the single thread, only main thread. So if you are creating the threads, it may be create that your game start crashing. So you don't try to use the threads in Unity. You can use the coroutines whenever you want. You can use invoke method whenever you want. So okay, so there is a one question that I am sharing with you, that is, can threads be used to modify a texture on the runtime? Answer is no. Can threads be used to move a game object on the scene? So here is the thing. Improve the code using the threads, this random number generation without the spoiling the performance. So if you are using the thread for the number generation or random, so there is not any problem, but for these two questions the answer is no. You can see the reason. No, because texture and message are example of the element stored in the GPU memory, and Unity does not allow other threads beside the main one to make modification on this kind of data, whatever I have explained earlier. No fetching transform reference is not thread safe in Unity. So whatever I have said, that for the any task in Unity we can't use the thread, because there is already main thread is running, so it is not safe. But yeah, to number generation you can use the thread, because that is not complicated thing. Mathematics is very simple for the Unity, so you can just use that thread to generate the random numbers. Okay, let's move on another question, that is the issue with the code below. Provide an alternative implementation that would correct the problem using the Unity engine. So here is the script, that is the start transform.position.x equal to 10. So this is the wrong code. Why? Because if you remember that if you are using the transform.position.x and you directly providing the value, that is not a good idea. That is not Unity support. You will get the compile time error when you will use. So what is the right way to use? You have to use the vector, that is the, you have to take the new position in the vector form 10 transform dot position dot y z, and then transform dot position, then you have to put the vector to the transform dot position, not directly 10. So this is the right script, and you should always remember that you cannot change directly position of any game object. You have to create the vector and then you have to assign that vector to transform dot position. Let's move on in another question, very asked question, that is the difference between update, fixed update, late update. So this question is also very common, most of the interviewer ask, that is the update, late update, fixed update. What is the difference between them? So update is called on every frame, means it call on frame wise. When frame runs, it calls regardless of time passed in last frame. The good movement input control, most of time you use, means all the input work taking place in the update, and usually you will use the time dot delta time to take the part time into account. So whenever you giving the some speed inside the update, you always have to use time dot delta time. And what is the delta time? Delta time is the time fraction between the two frames. So update calls in every frame, and all the input work taking place in the update, whatever you taking from the keyboard or any button, you have to use the update. And what is the use of late update? The late update called after all the update methods are processed, means after when update method call and in every frame, so after that our late update calls. And most of the late update contain the camera follow script, means whenever a player going, so our camera follow the player, so that script and that code written in the late update. So you can see camera follow your character, it's good to update after it has moved, means when player move, at that time our camera will move to follow him, not that just first our camera follow then our player move. That is not a good idea. Okay, and there is also fixed update. So fixed update is a very beautiful method, because all the physics calculation taking place in the fixed update or raycast should be also used in the fixed update. So you should also remember that fixed update is for physics calculation, physics movement, physics force. We use the fixed update. It's called by physics engine in the fixed intervals that can be set in the option. So hope you got the basic difference in update, late update and fixed update. Fixed update is the physics method, means all the physics things will be in the fixed update. Late update, camera follow script will be written in the late update, it will call after the update method, and update method call in every frame, and most of the input taking occur in the update. Let's move on another question, that is the difference between destroy and destroy immediate unit function. So there is a very variety of the difference. Most of time I use the destroy immediate. Actually I never use it, but for the destroy immediate, people prefer to not use most of in time, because destroy immediate occur in the same frame, means if you are just writing the code, it's just destroy. Due to this you can get the null reference, or even it can change the order of your predefined methods, so that may also create problem. So preferable to use the destroy, not the destroy immediate. So you can see the difference. In editor it can remove the asset, you can see even in the play mode, means in the play mode if you're using, so your asset may be removed. This means bug in your code can remove prefab, art, sound, scenes. A destroy immediate moves the destruction out of the normal script execution order, but destroy in the same frame. Null same frame means in the same part, it's also give that object as a null. In destroy it doesn't occur on the same frame, it is a little slow. So slow thing is a good, it set all the references to that game object to null at the end of the frame. Okay, so I think that is the basic difference. I'm not just getting that much about the thing, but yeah, you can see that destroy immediate occur in the same frame, but destroy, it doesn't occur in the same frame, it is a little slow. And using the destroy immediate is not preferable. It can create the problem. It can just change the order execution order of your methods. Here is the very important question that most of the interviewer ask: difference between start and awake unity events. I don't know why I've written the unity events, but that is the unity events method. Okay, so what is the difference? Start and awake work in the similar ways, except awake is called first, means in awake and start, first awake is called after the initialization of all the game object. Unlikely start will called even the script component is disabled. And one plus point is that start called when your script is disabled from the component, from the game object. And one more thing, that start called before the first frame of the update call, that is not written here. So first awake will be called and then start will be called, but start always called before the first frame of the update. Using start together is useful for the separating initialization task into two steps: start before any update first frame. So that's I share with you. Okay, so you can just hit and try with your script. You will understand much more better awake and start, that who is getting called first, who is getting called when script is not enabled. So that's thing. And here is another difference between the static and dynamic batching. So what is the static batching? Static batching is basically you have 3D game objects, 2D game objects, and few are the moving, few are the not moving. So if you know that that game object is not movable, so at that time you can mark that game object is static. And dynamic batching is not supported in the most of the render pipeline, so it is very rare. That static batching see in the glossary, Unity combines them, render them together. And when you just mark the static, so all the physics calculation doesn't work for the static. So if you mark any game object is static, it will not move. Whatever you apply the force, it will not move. Okay, in dynamic batching, for the small enough meshes, this transform their vertices on the CPU, group similar vertices together, and renders them in one draw call. So that is the dynamic batching, and that is the static batching. So I'm not sure about much more about dynamic batching, but I'm clear about the static batching. In static batching, just you mark in the inspector, you can see the static, so you can just on that check box. So whatever you are getting question in your interview, you can just drop in the comment box so that people can see and understand, and that will help for them. And if you didn't get any question of them, so you can also let me know in the comment box. It will help us to improve. But if you are getting any questions, so you can also share that how many questions you got in your interview. And if there is something different question, so you can also drop in the comment box. I will cover in the next time. Okay, so next question is, what is the use of occlusion culling? What is the culling? Occlusion culling, people ask that what is the culling means. Culling means exclude. So what exclude? That occlusion culling I'm explaining, you can read about this. But what is the occlusion culling? Whatever camera is seeing, that thing is only rendered. And culling means exclude, means other thing will be exclude, that will be not rendered at that time. So you have to just bake all the scene, and then you apply that whatever camera will see, only that scene will be created, otherwise everything is just off. So that is the thing. Occlusion culling is a process which prevents Unity from performing rendering calculation for game objects that are completely hidden from the view. Occluded means exclude by other game objects. So all the calculation will work only which are the in front of the camera, not other. So you have to bake the things. And if you want me to do the tutorial on the occlusion culling, I can do. You can just drop in the comment box. And in every frame, camera perform culling operation that examine renders in the scene, and exclude means cull means exclude those do not need to draw on. By default, camera perform fractum culling, which exclude all the renders that do not fall within the camera view fractum. Okay, fractum means whatever area camera see. And the next question is very important question, that is the static class versus singleton class. So there are so many differences, but I am sharing one. You can just search about it and read that what are the many other differences. First difference I am telling you, not written is here, that static class cannot create the object, but singleton class occur, and singleton class have one object, and that object exist in the whole application. Means if you have a singleton class A, so A class have only single object, but if you have class B, that is the static, so that class B cannot create any object. So here you can see one more difference. While a static class allows only static methods, and you cannot pass static class as a parameter. Means in static class you have only static method, but in the singleton class you can implement interfaces, inherit from other class, allow inheritance, while static class cannot inherit their instance members. So singleton is more flexible than static classes and can maintain state. Means all type of the methods you can create in this singleton classes, and it is very useful that you can use that singleton in your whole application. So that is the beauty of the singleton, and you can get much more about the singleton and static. So I just don't want to discuss much more about it. You can just search about it. That video will create a very long video. What is the use of yield keyword? So you must have seen that yield keyword used when we use the coroutines, enumerator, yield return new, wait for seconds. So what is the use of yield keyword? Yield keyword is a very useful concept in the C#, that yield keyword known is used to custom stateful iteration over a collection. The yield keyword tells compiler that method in which it appears in a iterated block. So yield is very useful, that whenever you use the yield keyword, it gives one output at a one time, and it also return to that state whenever it's leaving the program. So that is the beauty. In coroutine you can also see that when you use the yield return, so it is also use the custom stateful iteration. Means it's just wait for 1 second and then go to the unity method and then return on that state also. So you can just search about the yield keyword, and you can get much more examples of the yield keyword, so that you can understand that what is the use of yield keyword. Okay, and I can give you one examples, that if you are running one loop I to 10, and if I am putting if condition, that if I is greater than 4, and I am using the yield, and then whenever I will use the yield, so all the value I will get 4 to 10 in whenever I am calling that method. So that is the beauty of the yield. If you are not using the yield, so it will just print the 5 value, not the all the 5 to 10 values. I hope you got the idea. I'm not just writing the code, but you can get what I am saying. It is what is coroutine. So it is also a very asked question, that is what is the coroutine. Coroutine allows you to split tasks across the several frames. Coroutine allows you to split tasks across several frames. There is normal methods, but in the coroutine is that kind of method that you can wait and then you can run, you can wait and then you can run. Means it can stop the process, it can wait. So that is the written. The coroutine allows you to split tasks across the several frames. In Unity, coroutine is a method that can pause execution and return control to Unity, but then continue where it left off on the following frame. So this is the beauty of the coroutine, that you can pause the execution and then restart from where it left. In most situations, when you call a method, it runs completion and then returns control to the calling method plus any optional return values. This means that any action that takes place within the method must happen within a single frame update. So let's talk about invoke methods. I'm just making in parts because it's a really very, I have just 2 parts completed and it is third time I took rest and then starting again. So let's talk about what is the invoke methods. Basically, invoke methods looks like similar to the coroutines, but that is not coroutines. So invoke means when you simply invoke a methods. So you just invoke a methods in a small amount of time or in a particular duration of time. So let's suppose you have method A and you want to invoke that methods after the 2 seconds when it start run. So what I will do, invoke, and then I will call that methods in double quote A, and then I put comma 2 seconds, means only 2, then that method will call after the 2 seconds. So any method if we want to call after a delay, so we can use the invoke. And not only invoke, there are invoke repeatings. If you want to call a methods in a repeating modes in particular time of delay, like I want to call a methods in every 2 seconds, so what I will do, I will use invoke repeating. Invoke repeating takes 3 parameters. First one is method, and then first time how much delay it will take, so that's amount of the time, and then after that in how much after how much time it will call again and again. So at that time we use the invoke repeating. So invoke repeating, both are the similar kind of methods. So you hope you understand what I am saying. So you can see the what I have written. The invoke function allow you to schedule methods call occur at the later time. Okay, so hope you got the idea what is the invoke and what is the coroutine. So there is a slight difference in invoke, you must also know about it. So we'll discuss about it, and let's understand what is the difference in invoke and coroutine. So invoke is useful if you want to do something one time only. Okay, means not invoke is not something that run inside the method, but it's call before the method. You call the method through the invoke. So that is also one difference. And the secondary difference is that a coroutine is able to pause the execution, let game continue running, and then do something else later. This make them useful for the process which run over time. And there is one more very basic difference, that is the you can pass arguments to the coroutines, but in invoke methods you can't pass any parameters. Why you cannot pass? Because in invoke you not pass the method like A and then bracket. In invoke you pass the method by double quote, so you just name double quote A, so you can't pass any methods there. So that is the very basic difference between the invoke and coroutine. So let's move on next question, and let's see what is the next question. So the next question is very important, and this is the important question that most of the interviewer ask: what is the delegate, why we use? Even they can ask what is the event. So event, let me complete what is the event. Event is something happen, that is the event. Like you click on the button, that is the event. Player die, that is the event. What is the delegate? Delegate is something that pass the references of the methods. Like if you click on the button, so if you click on the buttons, that is the event. If that event is subscribed by the delegate, so all the subscribers will get that message that they have something event have happened. So basically what is the delegate? Delegate is a type of represents reference to the methods with the particular parameter list and return type. When you instantiate a delegate, you can associate its instance with any method with the compatible signature and return type. Okay, so any event happens, you just put the delegate there, and that delegate you can subscribe by the many methods, and when event will happen, that delegate will send to those methods who have subscribed to that delegate. So that is the delegate. Hope you have used, and if you are not getting, so you just search on the YouTube, and there I have made the tutorial. You will get that how delegate works, but I have tried to explain, and it is little tricky to understand what is the delegate. But basically, if you understand the event, so event might be anything that you get the response from the server. So you can also put the delegate, and whenever you will get the response, at that time your all the subscriber method will be just get the that you any event have happened. So that is the use of delegate. So I think you must watch that video, you will get a better idea. Okay, so let's move on another question. That is also a very common question on the internet, and it is everywhere, and in my one interview they have asked, so that's why I also took this. So let's run. Which of the following examples will run faster? First one, 1000 game objects, each with mono behavior implementing the update call methods. Means we have 1000 game objects, and on every one there is attached one script, one mono behavior script, and there is one method, that is the update callbacks. And the second scenario is one game object with one mono behavior array of 1000 classes, each implementing a custom callbacks. Which one will run faster? So 1000 game object with each one mono behavior implementing the update callbacks, and one game object with one mono behavior with array of 1000 classes. Which one is fast? Second one is fast, because when you create the mono behaviors, lots of mono behaviors, it make a slow implementation, slow runnability of the program. So if there is one single mono behavior, so it will take less time, and one update you can call 1000 array very fast way. So this is the explanation that update callback is called using the C# reflection, which is significantly slower than calling a function directly. In our example, 1000 game object each with mono behavior means 1000 reflection call per frame. Means how much there will be game object, there will be a mono behavior script that makes us slower. There will be 1000 reflection, but there is one game object with one mono behavior, there will be only one reflection and one update, so that will be very fast. So I think second option is a very best to use. Let's move on another question. That is what is the player prefs, which data type supports player prefs? Basically we use player prefs to save the data in temp memory. So what is the player pref? Player prefs is a class that store player preferences between game sessions. It can store, which data type it can store? String, float, integer. That's it. So how you store the value? Just use the key and value. Whenever you want to, let's suppose I want to store to just save or store in player prefs, so I will use player prefs and then player prefs set, and then there will be key. So key will be our score, and then I will provide the value. So every time you use, so you have to provide particular data type, that which data type you want to store, and there is a set method, there is a get method. If you want to set any value to a key you want to store, so you use player prefs dot set int set string, that is the, and if you want to get, so player prefs dot get, and then you pass the just only key. So that is the use of player prefs. And Unity stores player prefs data differently based on the which operating system application runs on. So if you trying to get that where your data have stored, so you have to just check out the Unity documentation that where your data stores when you use the player prefs. Okay, so this is the very basic explanation of the player prefs, that player prefs a class which stores the values in float, string, integer. Okay, let's move on the further question. What is 2.5D in Unity? what is 2.5D in Unity? As we know that Unity game engine is supports 2D and 3D. So what is 2.5D in Unity? Whenever you create a project, it asks that it is a 2D project or it is a 3D project. If you start the project 2D, so you can convert in 3D. If you start in 3D, you can convert it is 2D. Means everything is 3D. And if you want to make the 3D project in 2D, so that is not that much difference. I will talk about it. But what is the 2.5D? 2.5D is not particularly all the things in 2D, all the things in 3D. It is the combination of 2D and 3D. So basically using the 2D physics combined with the 3D graphics. So that is the 2.5D. It is the combination of 2D and 3D. So let's know what is the difference in Unity 2D and 3D. So there is no actual difference. Unity is a 3D game engine. Okay. So if you are creating a project in 2D, so there is not any difficult task to convert in 2D or 3D. So 2D is just sprites. It means everything whatever you use, that is the sprites in 2D, which are texture on the flat mesh, but everything is still always in 3D space regardless. There is nothing to choose between. Well, expect 2D physics will rarely 2D, but you can use 3D physics with the sprite you like. Since they are just meshes like everything else, so you can do whatever you like. Means on a sprite you can use the 3D physics also, but Unity have made the difference physics 2D, physics 3D. So in the 2D you use the physics 2D, you use the rigid body 2D. On the 3D you use the only rigid body. So 2D import images as a sprites instead of textures, but when you use the 3D, so everything is in 3D are the textures. 2D sets camera, means in 2D there is option that you can choose that camera is a orthographic projection, but in the 3D you can choose this is the perspective. But this is not complexity. You in the 3D you can also change the orthographic or perspective. It's depend on your requirement. The last thing is that 2D sets the scene view 2D. This is an orthographic view with the camera rotation locked. So 2D is camera is on the orthographic view, and in the 3D it is perspective, or it might be the orthographic. Okay. You might think that what is the orthographic, what is the perspective. So we will talk about that what is the orthographic and what is the perspective. But slowly we are getting a little medium size of question, that what is the state, what is the blend tree. So whenever you provide the whenever you perform the animations clip inside the Unity, like you are performing the player is running, player is walking, player is left going, right going, so this kind of animation performed by that is the state and blend tree. So what they basically follow the state machine structure. So what is the state? So there is a state, means you are running, that is the state. You are just ideal state, that is the state. But if you are walking and just walking left, walking right, so that is the blend. Means in one state you are just blending left, right, forward, backward, so that is the blend. And in state you are just running or you are just walking. So that is the basic difference. Hope you got what I am trying to say. So let's see that what are the statements. With states alone you can only have two motions, ideal or run. But with the blend tree you can blend varying amounts to go from ideal to slow walk to fast walk to jog or eventually to run. Okay, so in blend tree you can just blend, like if you're walking, so you can walk forward, backward, left, right. So that is the blend. Mean one state it's blending, but in state there is a particular state, like you are running or you are just walking. So that is the basic difference in state and blend tree. And in blend tree there are 1D, 2D, 3D. It's depend on your requirement. So you can just check out my FPS Unity multiplayer game and you can see that how I have performed the animation using the state and blend tree. So that will help you to understand what is the state and blend tree. And is theoretically that is not possible that I make you understand 100% until you are not going to use it. Okay, so let's move on further question. That is, what is the trigger in animation? Trigger concept in animation is very useful concept that you must use it. You must understand what is the trigger. A trigger is something that, let's suppose I perform the animation of my hand. So this is the 5-second animation of my hand. But trigger, what is the trigger? Trigger is that I have performed that animation. So in trigger, I am saying that when I am going in this state, so at that time I have just put the one trigger, and at that time I am getting know in my script that I have reached on at that point. Trigger basically is that getting to know that where we are on the animation clip. So if there is on the 5-second animation, so on the 3-second I have said that I have on the 3-second, and at that time I want to perform some particular task. So at that time I can perform. So that is the trigger. So you can define the trigger on which second, and you can write the script with the same trigger. So it will be triggered when your animation will play at the same amount where you have put the trigger. So this method allows you to activate an animation trigger to the cause a change in flow in state machine of animated controller. So even you can write anything when you get a trigger on that animation, so you can change the state or you can perform any particular task. So that is the use of trigger, and very useful concept that you can use, or you can just watch the tutorial on the YouTube. You will get to know that what is the trigger. I have used many times, but I'm not sure that you are saying you are getting my point or not, whatever I am saying. Okay, so let's move on. Another very important concept, that is the explain inverse kinematics animation. So this kind of very not very but advanced type of the question that people are expecting that you should know, even not used that much, but you must know. So inverse kinematic means inverse kinematics animation. This kind of animation used for your avatar type of the character, basically in the most of probably in the BR application, that there is your hands, means both hands, head. So at that time you just perform animation on your hand, your head. So basically what is the inverse kinematic animation is that it take a few points of your body, like hand, this hand, on the basis of if you move one point, so on the basis of that point our other body parts will be react, or other body parts will be moved. So in computer animation and robotics, and this kind of inverse kinematics used in the robotics also, but we also use in our application. So in computer animation and robotics, inverse kinematics is the mathematical process of calculating the variable joints parameters needed to place in of kinematic chain, such as robot manipulator or animation character skeleton in a given position and orientation related to start of the chain. So basically it's define the points in your hand, in this hand, and your head. So when one point move, on the basis of that our another 2 points also move. So it is also a very typical thing. You must watch the tutorial on the YouTube. You will get to know that how inverse kinematics works. Next question is, explain world space, local space, and screen space. These three spaces play a very important role in Unity. World space means whenever you take any game objects, so that is the world space. And in world space, if you take any children of that, so that is the local space. And whatever you see in your screen, in the canvas, that is your screen space. And in screen space there is a React transform, so that you can utilize that coordinate system. So these are the coordinate system you can apply in your Unity game engine. And in world space, so there is a way to transform, to convert from world space to local space, to local space to world space. Even you can just convert screen space to world space, local space, whatever, whenever you want to convert. So in this you can just convert from one space to another. These are the coordinate system that works in the Unity. Okay, so let's move on the next question, that is the what is the Sprite Atlas. Sprite Atlas play a very important role to optimize your game. Basically, what is the Sprite Atlas? Sprite Atlas is an asset that consolidates several textures inside a single image. So texture into a single combined texture. Unity can call this single texture to issue a single draw calls instead of multiple draw calls to access the packet texture all at once at a smaller performance overhead. Means if you use the single draw calls, that is the very best way in Unity, but if you use the multiple draw calls, so that is create a problem. So Sprite Atlas solve that problem. You just combine all the many images in the single textures, so that is the Sprite Atlas. So hope you got the idea. Basically it's used in 2D games mostly. And let's see the another question, that is the optimize Unity games. So what is the process to optimize Unity games? There are so many processes. I have just listed some of them. First thing, you have to see that what creating problems in your game. Means you can't optimize until you know that what is creating problem. There is a memory problem, there is a rendering problem, or even your game is lagging. So you have to find out that why it's creating the problem, or might be there are so much game objects creating. So what you have to do is that there is a profiler in Unity. So what you have to do is that open the profiler and see that where your game is creating problem. You have to just run and play and then record the screen of the profiler. That's where it's creating the problem. And after the identify the problems, you have to just take the action that how you can just optimize the your game. So there are batching system. What batching I already discussed with in static batching. Whatever game object is not moving, so in the inspector you have to just mark the static batching. And in the texture there is a particular different size of the texture, that 1018 24. So you have to just take the decision that on which texture size you want to run. So if there is a very high, that is also create problem. So you have to work on the middle where quality is not reducing, so you can just reduce the texture size. You have to just basically compress the texture size. And another is occlusion culling. In occlusion culling I have explained what is the occlusion culling. Occlusion culling is that exclude whatever not in front of the camera. So you have to exclude the rendering event calculation. So that is another way. And the reduce the number of game objects. If there are so much game objects, so you have to just work on it. And in a particular scene, I think you must define that in particular scene there must be that number of the game objects. You have to check the FPS, how much FPS is giving on that much. So also based on the basis of that you have to define that in one game object how much game objects you want. And another thing is that is the object pooling. So people can ask differently, what is the object pooling, or even they ask that what is the way to optimize your Unity games. So in object pooling, basically object pooling is that if let's suppose the best example is that if you are shooting through your guns and their bullet are generating, so what you have to do is that you have to reutilize that bullets, and you have to just create the bullet effect from your gun. So basically object pooling is that just to destroying the game object, or destroying the game objects which are getting instantiate, or you can just reutilize these game objects without creating and destroying. So this is the object pooling concept. You can just explore much more about the object pooling. And let's move further question. Hope you got all the questions idea. And if you have any question, you can just drop in the comment box. And I'm not giving that much explanation, so you can just there are so many topics you have to just do yourself. You have to watch the tutorials, then you will get clarity about that. So let's move on the further question. So there is a very basic question. So if you have used, so you can just reply very soon. Can we load two scenes at once in a hierarchy window? What do you think? Yes, we can. How we can? So whenever we use scene manager dot load scene, we have to use scene manager load async scene. So at that time, if there is one scene, so two scene will be loaded in the hierarchy, and it will be just overlap with each other. So you have to also see the things. So let's move on further question. That is the, if a queue made it static, we apply force 100 unit, what will happen? I have already explained about it. You can reply very soon that if you have marked the game object static from the inspector, so you can't move that game object. So that is the reply. And if a game object is a, means whenever you just after the basic question there apply a if, that interviewer want to see that what's your reaction is going on, means how you are going to reply this question. So if a 3D game object is moving, how we can slow motion effects, like if you are shooting through the gun, and at a particular time or at a particular distance of from our target, it must show the slow motion effect. So what we can do, we can use the time scale, and its time scale value vary in the 0 to 1. So when we want to pause the application, so we use 0. When we want to run, so it is 1. So you have to use this time scale to 0.5, 0.6. So at that time it will show the slow motion effect, but you have to use it for the for 1 second or 2 seconds, not that much. After that you have to use that time scale is 1. Okay, so let's move on another question. And one more thing, that time scale is also used for pause your application, so you have to also use that. And let's move on further question. That is very important question. That is, if a animation is playing after using time scale equal to 0, what we can do to stop animation in a pause state? Means you have to perform a animation and you want to pause your application, so you write the code time scale equal to 0, but your animation is still playing. So what action you can do, what action you can perform? So for this, whenever you go on the animator, there is a update mode. So on update mode there are 3 options. One of them is unscaled time, so you have to choose unscaled time. So when you will use the unscaled time, your animation will be also stop, otherwise it will still started playing. Okay, so let's move on the further question. That is the, what is FPS rate? So you can't reply someone that it is the first person shooter. No, FPS rate is something that your refresh rate of your screen, that I'm saying that 1 FPS means in 1 second, one time your screen is getting refreshed. So what is FPS rate? So in 1 second, game can compute its game code and rendering loop. Okay, so let's suppose, for example, 500 frame per second means 500 means 60 fps or 90 fps, 120 fps. What it means? In 120 fps means that 1 second 120 times our screen is getting refresh means it's getting computed and getting rendered on the screen. So 500 frame per second means that software can compute the game loop and render an image to the screen 500 times every second. If the game get more complex and there is more complicated content on the screen or computational requirements have increased, then computer will not able to render as fast because it has to do more work, which would lower how many frames per second it could be produced. So that's why in one scene, if you are taking one game object, so that frame rate will be higher because at that time there will be not that much computational. But if you put the 1 lakh game objects, so at that time rendering and calculations will just reduce the frame rates. So that's why it is preferable to use less game objects, less complication in your scene. So hope you got the idea what is the FPS rate. We talk about the 60 fps, 24 fps, 120 fps. So these are the meanings of that. In 1 second they perform 120 times their computational. So let's move on another, that is what does mono behavior mean in Unity. Whenever you create a script from a game object, so at that time mono behavior apply in the class. So why? Because mono behavior is the base class from which every Unity script derives. Whenever you will create any Unity script, not a class. A simple class is different thing, but Unity script, that is the Unity script. So at that time mono behavior class will be inherited. So therefore when doing a script in Unity, you use the base class to better control how things are accessed to you, so you do not need to do it yourself. So whenever you create a game object and you create the script, so that will be mono behavior class, and due to that mono behavior class you will be able to use your predefined methods like awake, start, update, let update, delay update, late update, fix update, all the predefined methods. Okay, so let's move on further question, that is the how to change texture of a cube at a runtime. Means we have one cube and we want to write a code that how we can change the texture of a cube. So for this, if you want to utilize is a image to change the cube texture, so what we have to do is that take that image, change into the texture 2D, and then we have to just write the code cube render material main texture, and then we have to pass that texture. So normal image cannot directly pass to the material, we have to just convert in the texture. The second thing is that first we create the material, then pass that image, and that will create the material, and then write the code and pass that material directly. So that is another way. And let's move on. What is Quaternion? You must have heard that Quaternion.identity. So what is the Quaternion? Quaternion used to represent the rotation, and it is really not easy to understand, so you have to watch lots of tutorial, but it will be somewhere create the problem. But simply you can understand that there are so many methods, predefined methods you can do externally. Quaternion.identity, Quaternion eilers, there are everyone have their own meanings. So quaternions basically represent the rotations, and if you use the Quaternion.identity, so it will show that whatever its rotation will be, it will show the same rotation. So that is the use of Quaternion, that it used to represent the rotation in Unity. So you can just R&D about the what is the Quaternion. So let's move on further question, that is the if we have two vectors, how to calculate distance. So I have already explained to you that if we have two vectors, like we have this is game object, there is target, so how we will create the distance between them. So simply there are two ways that you can take this vector position and this vector position and then perform the mathematics. But there is predefined method, that is the distance, vector dot distance, and here you will put all two vectors, so that will give you a distance. So that is the very simple way to get the distance between two vectors. And the next question is, what is the mesh in Unity? What is mesh? Means cube is a mesh, your sphere is a mesh. So all the 3D objects is a mesh. So how you can define it? A class that allows you to create or modify meshes. Meshes contain vertices, multiple triangles, arrays, even a sphere or cube. All is the combination of the small triangles. So whenever you want to create some material, so upper layer is just triangles, so at that point there your textures take place. But if you create a very big sphere and just you are inside that sphere, so you will see there is no any texture looking. So at that time you have to just invert the textures. So that is the different thing I will share in future tutorials, but that is the way. And the triangle array are the indices into the vertex arrays, 3 indices for each triangles. For every vertex there can be a normal, 8 texture, coordinates, color, tangent and bone weight. So this is the definition of the mesh in Unity. So mesh is a cube, sphere, whatever you use the 3D objects, but you can define through the mesh are the vertex combination of the triangles arrays, vertices. So this is the mesh. And what is the kinematic rigid body in Unity? Means what is the use of kinematic on the rigid body? So kinematic rigid body is in Unity when you toggle on, so that means there will be no any physics apply. So that is the use of kinematic rigid body. So you can see the in simple terms, rigid body means Unity will not apply any physics to the kinematic rigid body if you toggle on. If rigid body is kinematic, you can handle the behavior of rigid body yourself using the script. Unity will not apply any physics to the objects. Mean whenever you attach one rigid body and there is a one is kinematic, if you on that, so there will be no any effect of the physics. So you have to all the things you have to perform through your script. There will be no any gravity. What is the scriptable objects? What is the scriptable objects? You must have used the scriptable objects. It is also a very common question that what is the scriptable objects? Scriptable objects are really the objects that is not objects. Means if you have a class, so you have to create the object of a class, but scriptable object is really not a scriptable object. There is no any mono behavior inheritance, there is no any object creation. So what is scriptable? Scriptable is an asset. If you talk about the scriptable objects, so it is the asset which occur in the asset, not inside the hierarchy. So let's understand that definition. A scriptable object is a data container that you can use to save large amount of data independent of class instances. Means there is no any instance. One of the main use cases a scriptable object is to reduce your project memory uses by avoiding the copy of values. Means you have to not create any instance. So that is the first very good thing, and this is useful for your project has a prefab. Means is there any prefab, that value doesn't change that much. So at that time you have to just create and the scriptable object, and that store unchanging data in the attached mono behavior scripts. So what I am understanding is that it is not you will understand until you use in your project. So just remember the lines that scriptable object is a data container that you can use to save large amounts of data. And if you want to see, so I have not made any tutorial, but I have used in my many projects. So you can just watch the video on the YouTube so that you can get idea that how it's work the scriptable objects. Okay, let's move on the further question, that is the explain what is ECS. ECS means entity component system. So this is the new way to perform the coding in Unity, but still I think 0.5% developers use the ECS. I have tried many times, but it is really not in my practice to use the ECS. So the entity component system is a core of Unity data oriented stack means dot. You can see, as the name indicate, ECS has three principal parts: entities, the entities or things that populate your game or program; components, the data associated with your entities but organized by data itself rather than entity. So for the more clarification, you can watch the bracket tutorial on the ECS, so it will get much more better idea. How many types of canvas we have and use of them. So if someone is asking, so you have to explain these things but if you use the canvas, so these are the types: that world space, screen space, overlay, screen space, camera. So you can define that if you want to use the if you want to use your canvas world space, so you can use the world space. There is screen space overlay, or whatever you are seeing in the camera you want to perform in your canvas, so at that time you use the screen space. So this thing you can also search on the Google and get a deep knowledge about it, but this is the basic explanation about it. What is the new input system? So new input system is a new way to provide the input through the system. It doesn't support in the mobiles. Basically it supports in desktop application, VR devices like Oculus. So the quickest way to get started script is to read the current state directly from the input device. Means you have to not write the code that much earlier, that you click on that button, then you have to just predefine the things. You have to just add and just you have to drag and drop the things. So you have to also just watch the video on the new input system. Let's talk about next question, that is the what is the use of LODs in Unity. Have you ever heard about the LODs? If you have experience on this, so I think you must know, but if you don't know, so let me explain what is the LOD. LOD full definition is that LOD LOD definition means LOD, level of detailing. What it happens that when you apply the LOD, so what happens that if you are very far away, so you see the little fraction of it, means there is not that camera get a very little detailing, very level of very rare, very less level of detailing. But if you get closer and closer, so it's define the many labels, that if you are far away, so how your object will be, how your object detailing will be, it when you will be very close, then how your level of detailing will be. So that is the use of LOD. Hope you get a little idea. So let's read about it. That the LOD technique allow Unity to reduce the number of triangles it renders of game object based on its distance from the camera. If we are very far away, so we don't want to see the much more level of detailing, because in real world when we are seeing something very far away, so we don't want to show the that much level of detailing. But when we are closer, so it should be a very very detailed view. So what happens in LODs, it's just create a rendering process very simpler on the basis of the distance. To use it, game object must have a number of meshes with decreasing level of detail in geometry. These meshes are called LOD. So you can use in your application if you are making any FPS type of the game. So I think that will help your game to optimize. So this is also a way to optimize your game. So let's move on another question, that is the what is the difference in materials and physics materials. Materials, that is the texture apply on your game object, your 3D objects. Physics materials, when you create the physics material, so it's create the physics like friction, jumping, bouncing. So that is the physics material. So as a definition you can see, a material is a file that contains information about the lighting of an object with that material. What is the physics material? It is used to adjust friction and bouncing effect of the colliding objects. If you apply a physics material on the game object, so you can identify, you can just provide the value that how much friction you want to apply. You can give that how much bounciness you want to apply. So that is the basic difference in physics material and material. So that's the thing that interviewer want to know, that how much detailed knowledge you have about the material and physics material. So let's move on another part, that is what is the texture. So texture are image or movie files that lay over a wrap around your game objects to give them a visual effects. So basically texture, what is the texture? Texture is just create a visual effect on your 3D objects. So you can see that Unity recognize any image or movie file in 3D project asset folder as a texture. If you are taking image in the 3D, so that is the texture, but in 2D that is the sprites. So that is the texture. Hope you get the idea. This is the basically a file, image file. Okay, let's move further. That is the what is the render texture. That was the texture, only texture. What is the render texture? Render texture is that something you can use the dynamically, means that texture may change at a runtime. Okay, what it means at runtime, that if on the render texture you can apply a video to play, or you can just cast your camera in front of your render texture, that if your camera seeing anything and you want to show on your any display, so you have to use the render texture. So what is the render texture? Render texture are the textures that contain a rendered to, means it can also take a rendered, that normal texture rendered on the material, but that texture that take themselves on the rendering, that can be used to implement image based rendering, effects, dynamic shadows, projectors, reflection, or surveillance cameras. Even you can play the video. A render texture only has a data representation on the GPU, and you need to use texture 2D.real pixel to transform its contents to CPU and memory. So hope you get the idea of about render texture. Let's move the further question, that is the what is the culling mask. So occlusion culling was a different thing but little similar. How? Let's know. Culling means to avoid or exclude and mask. So what happens that if you defined a particular layer and you don't want to see inside in camera view, so at that time you use the culling mask. Culling mask is a property on the camera where you can define that in camera which layer you want to see. Let's suppose you want to see the bottles, so you apply the bottles. So whenever our camera go, if there is bottles layer, so it will be see the bottles layer, otherwise it will not see. Similarly, the Unity camera class has culling mask such that each camera can be set to only display a subset of available layers. This is handy for the placing 3D objects in one layer visible by the main camera, say the GUI to another layer visible by the different camera. So you can use the multiple camera, and you can define that in which camera you want to which layers to show. So this is the culling mask. Okay, so let's move the next question, that is what is the difference in projection perspective and orthographic. So basically, what is the projection? Projection is something that in which direction our light is falling on the objects. So what is the perspective? Perspective means similarly real world, like this is the mic, so I'm able to see from this angle, from this angle. So this is the perspective, means left, right, up, down, bottom, up. This is the perspective projection. Lights is just taking place on the mic and I'm able to see it. But what is the orthographic? Orthographic is to just able to see that mic in only one direction. That is the orthographic view. Means you can, in the orthographic you will able to see the only 2D view, not the any 3D view. Okay, so let's understand what is the perspective camera is how we see the real world. If take look at the things around us, they have depth, we can judge their distance. Imagine looking at every long road, it will appear to narrower, it is goes further into the distance. This is due to the perspective. Camera will render objects uniformly with no sense of perspective. That is the orthographic, only 2D view. Okay, so in mostly 2D games there is a orthographic view. In 3D games it might be perspective or orthographic, so it depends on the developers who making the game. Let's move on the next question, that is what is the use of post-processing. What is the post-processing? Post-processing is a script that apply on the camera, and there is due to the post-processing script there is a many effects you can apply, and whenever I will see, it is something like the filters. I use the when I wear the glasses, so I can see the world differently. So that's the thing post processing do. It is a one kind of script. There is a many properties you can play around with and play around the width, and due to these effects your game scene look better. It depends on how much properties you have used and how much knowledge about to use it. Okay, so Unity provides a number of post-processing effects and full screen effects that can greatly improve the appearance of your application with little setup time. You can use these effects to simulate camera, physical camera, film properties, or to create the stylish value. So in the post-processing you can just do the blur effect, you can just do the many effects, means amazing effects. I have used it, and it's you can try from the just you have to download the from the asset store post processing. This is the free, you can play with around and you will get a much better idea. You can get the fish eye view using the post processing effect. Let's move further. That is the what is the profiler, how you can use it. So in the optimization I have shared the what is the profiler. Profiler is just a window in Unity where you can get that you can check the performance of your application, that it's taking the more memory, it's creating the how much creating the vertices, and much more information about your application. The Unity profiler is a tool you can use to get performance information about your application. You can connect it to device on your network or device connected to your machine to test how your application runs on your intended release platform. You can also run it editor to get overview of resource allocation while you are developing your application. So profiler is a great way to know that where your game is lacking, where your resources are getting used. So I think you should use your application profilers, and then you get to know that where you have to optimize. So next question is, what is the nav mesh system? Nav mesh, explain the components. So in navigation system, not the real world navigation, but if you are making in Unity any navigation, means you have to go like this, you have to jump there, you have to follow the path. So at that time you use the navigation system in Unity, and it allows you to create the characters which can navigate the game world. Okay, if there is a one character and in game world you can just walk, and it give you a characters the ability to understand they need to take a stair to reach the second floor or to jump to get over a ditch. So there are how many components it use. Nav mesh. So nav mesh means where you have created that where you have to go, where you have to not go. Nav mesh agent means character. Character will move around the game world. And off mesh link, and off mesh link, and nav mesh obstacle. Off mesh link means where you want to jump to reach the second floor, or you want to take the. What is the nav mesh obstacles? Nav mesh obstacle means where there is obstacle where character have to stop. Okay. What is the shader? How many shaders we have in Unity? So shader, what is the shader? Shader are the small scripts that contain the mathematical calculation and algorithm for calculating the color of each pixels rendered based on the lighting input and material configuration. Means you can just modify the material at a runtime using the shaders. So that is the script, and you have to write the code, you have to perform the mathematical calculation, and you can calculate the color of each pixels. You can just perform so many things using the shaders, and they are by default in Unity supports the standard surface shader, ray tracing shader, shader variant collection, unlit shader, image effect shader, compute shader. These are the predefined shader you can use. The question is, what is the use of joints? How many we have? So basically, what is the joints? Means in physics you have turned that there is a pulley. So if you just make something at this point and you just drop something, so that is the joint that it just move around that joint. So there are so many joints in Unity, not in Unity but physics. So let's suppose this is also a joint. Means joints is something that this is the joint, means point where from where any action can take place. So in Unity you can use the joints to attach a rigid body to another. Means a joint is something that when at a point where two objects or two game objects are connecting to each other. So Unity, you can use the joints to attach a rigid body to another. According to the requirement, you can restrict allow movement. Means you can restrict the movement, like if you want to, there is a one option that you can give the movement that in this area this have to move. Joints also have other options that can enable a specific effect. You can set a joint to break the force applied to exceed a certain threshold. Means then, let's suppose this finger is connected to this, but you can also define the threshold that on how much force it can disconnect from each other. So basically joints are just connect two objects, but you can also define so many properties like how much threshold you want to apply the force, how many movement you want, how many in which direction you want to move. There are so many joints like character joint. On the character, you can apply the character joint when you want to show the dolly effect. Means if fall down some dolly, so it's just give a feeling that is breaking. And configurable joint, that is a very important joint, that all joint exist in the configurable. So if you have much more knowledge, so you can make any joints using the configurable. And fixed joint, hinge joint, spring joint. So these are the joints you can use. Now it's time to discuss with the fuse scenario. That is the very most common questions, and this is for the basically for experienced developer. It most probably asks if you have worked on the multiplayer game. Let's suppose your multiplayer game is running, you just disconnected from the server. How you will manage this scenario? So for manage this scenario, first what I will do is just check internet connection. If there is not internet connection, so just show the disconnected panel and show the message that internet is not available. Then start checking internet is available or not in the background. Means after showing the panel, if internet is available after some time, so just you can create the connection with the server and request to the server current state of a game. And whenever you get the current state of game data, so you can just show the scenario of current state, that how our game were reached between the disconnection. So this is the one scenario. And the second scenario is that what you will do if your game is minimized for short or long term. So if it is short term or for the long term, so there may be many scenario, but for normal condition, what you have to see that when you back in game from the minimization, there is on application pause, so you can utilize that method. So if internet is available, check we are connected to the server or not. So because when you are for short term, so if internet is available, so might be you are connected with the server, but for the long term, if you are going in the background, so might be you disconnected from the server. So if connected to the server, so just check. So you just request for the current status data to the server and update the game. And if you are not connected to the server, so just create the connection and get the current status data and just set all the data, all the players, where they are, which turns going on. So you can do this like. And most of the server is disconnected when you are not requesting them, or you are disconnected to 7 to 15 seconds like SFS server. So if you are in the background more than 7 to 15 seconds, so might be you disconnected from the server. So in this scenario you have to follow. And let's move toward the next question, that is what is the ping pong request. As I told you that if you're not making any request till the 15 second, so you might be disconnected from the server. So sometimes what happened that I'm talking about the real-time server, not that HTTP request. So whenever you are connected with the server and if you're not making any request to 15 or 20 seconds, it's the time just defined by the backend. So you have to perform the ping pong request. What is the ping pong request? A request that you have to make a request continuously in a 5 second 7 second, so that we didn't disconnect from the server. So you just perform the request and you get the response, so that we make a stable connection with the server. So what I have written here, a functionality which lets a computer A find out whether a computer B is reachable and responding a built into the internal control message protocol ICMP. Through an echo request, a computer A asks B to send back a echo response that when I request them, they give a response, so that we know that we are connected to each other. There are also many ways to see that we are connected or not, but the ping pong request we do so that we are stay connected, because sometimes we are playing the game, but no any request is getting play. So at that time we might be disconnected from server. So what we do is that in every 5 seconds we just perform a request. So that is the ping pong request. Let's move on. What is the use of server custom event? What is the custom event? So basically for the games, you have to define a particular task. For the particular task you have to make the server custom event. So that event you just perform the request and you will get the response. So it's just try to identify that which event is related to which task. So custom event can be specific in the game action your user perform. They allow you to track player behavior. Unity analytics does not track automatically, such as level achievements, scene change, entering a store, interacting with the game object. Each custom event can have odds in parameter. Setting parameters on your event allow you to filter data collected at the time the event occurred. So basically what it does is every task have their own event, and you can see that there I have performed the event like user ID validation. If I want to perform the ID validation, so event is basically a common field that occur in front end and back end, and whenever they give backend give me response, I'm able to check with the event that that backend want to perform with this task. And when I request, so I use that event so that backend know that why I am firing that event, why I am requesting them. So the case is user ID validation. So this is our event for the I have made this for the validation. So there are so many events we have to make it so that we can communicate with the server proper way. So this is the custom event. And what is the model class? So basically model class is responsible for handling your data. So whenever we want to parse our JSON, so we create a model to just parse this JSON in a class. So model class is responsible for handling data and business logic. Or the model class represents shape of the data. Model is responsible for handling database related changes. So that is the use of model class, and the model class can be called by the many names. So whatever you call, but that is the use of model class. What is the JSON? Basically JSON क्या है? What is the JSON? JSON is a JavaScript object notation. It is a lightweight data interchange format, and when you request, so most probably backend give us in JSON format. They can give us in object, so they give us in JSON format. So it is easy to human read and write, and you can just learn about it that it is easy for machine to parse and generate. Is based on the subset of JavaScript programming language standard edition. So most probably all the language support the JSON. It is very lightweight, and by using the JSON you can just parse inside your classes. Okay. And what is a serialized field in Unity? So in Unity we use the serialize your script, it's only serialized public fields. Means when you create any variables as a public, so it is just show the reference in inspector. But if it is private, so at that time you will not able to see the reference inside the inspector. So at that time you have to use the serialized field. What it does that is private fields you can add the serialized field attribute to those to show the reference in the inspector. And the same way, what is the serializable? So serialized is a different thing. Serializable means to converting from object to bytes. Why we use it? When we parse JSON to our model class, so at that time on the class we use the serializable. Why we just parse from JSON and then convert into the bytes so that their state doesn't change. So you can see that serialization is a process converting an object into a stream of bytes to store the object or transmit it to memory or database. Means it is easy to transmit to memory and database a file. A main purpose is to save the state of an object in order to be able to recreate it when needed. The reverse process is called deserialization. Okay, so that is the use of serialization and deserialization. They can ask about it. So that's it, and this was the whole tutorial on interview question of interview job. And really it took me a lots of time to create this PPT and just recording this video. I think this took me 3 to 4 hours to recording this video. Making PPT took 5 to 6 hours. So just for you, and hope you enjoy the video. So don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Drop in the comments box if you have any question, and in your interview what question you are getting, just drop in the comment box, and it will help me to recreate the video when in future, so that other people can take a benefit of it. So you can support me by sharing this video. You can just support me on the Patreon so that I can run this channel very easily. So thanks for watching. Have a good day. See you in next video. Bye bye. And don't forget to check out me on Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as my other blogging channel, tech channel. So bye bye. Take care. See you in next video. So in next video what I will do is that I will provide you the multiplayer. Means multiplayer not related to Photon but SFS also. So all the interview question related to multiplayers, because this was just if in any stream you are going for Unity job, so these are the question they ask. But if you are going for particularly the multiplayer AR VR, so they just ask this question as well as they also ask those questions. So I will also make video on those topics. So thanks for watching. Have a good day. See you in next video.